In this video, I'm going to show you how to make your backup plunger shoot identical to your primary plunger without even needing to go on the range. So in case you wanted to try a different plunger type from a different manufacturer, but your bow is shooting so well with the plunger that you've already got set up, I'm going to show you how to test them side by side against each other to make sure you're not changing your center shot and you're not changing your tune nearly at all. So that way you can change them back and forth and find out which one actually shoots better than the other. For those of you that are new here, my name is Jake Kaminsky. I'm a two-time Olympic silver medalist in the sport of archery. I'm working to make this channel a really great resource for all types of archery, including form, tuning, and exercises to help make you a better archer. So if you're interested in learning more and want to become a better archer, start by hitting that subscription button and the notification bell, so that way you're notified every time a new video is uploaded. I'm pumping out tons of content lately, and you definitely don't want to miss out on what's coming out.
You're watching the Jake Kaminsky YouTube channel.
So I made a video not that long ago explaining about plungers, how they work, what to do to adjust them, how to compare them. Just kind of gave a brief overview on how to adjust them and set them up specific for you. But I've had a lot of comments and questions asking a lot of things, so I'm going to review some of those questions and kind of clear the air on some things. And then I'm going to show you how to exactly set these up. This is a biter plunger and this is an AAE plunger. And I'm going to show you how I can set them up so they're exactly the same, so I can go and try them and see which one actually shoots better, or I can have a backup for my primary in case something were to go wrong at a tournament. So one of the questions that I saw was how much money to spend on a plunger. In my video that I talked about what to save money on or what to spend money on equipment, I specifically talked about buy a plunger, and I specifically said buy once, cry once. Buy the best one you can afford because it will last you a very long time. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link up at the top here, and then there'll be a link in the description below as well. But anyway, as far as plungers go, how much money to spend on a plunger? Now, there is a reason that the top high-dollar plungers are bringing in excess of $100. And mainly, it's because there was a lot of R&D and also a lot of craftsmanship that goes into each unit to make sure that each unit is the same from unit to unit. And so that way you have the ability to buy replacement parts for one thing that goes wrong as opposed to having to buy a whole new plunger. Now, you definitely cannot go wrong with an AAE gold plunger, and you cannot go wrong with a biter plunger. They are both top of the line plungers in their fields. One's made in America, one's made in Germany, and the quality and craftsmanship between the two is just second to none. Some of those other ones that are in the $50 range, give or take, are using lesser quality materials, so they end up wearing out sooner, or the actual internal parts of it are not the best, meaning you're not going to shoot the best that you can. So I'll do another video eventually talking more in depth about this AAE plunger and why I chose it, but the gist of it is that the plunger tip itself does not wear out your arrows, unlike the biter plunger tip, and the tip of the AAE plunger is actually lighter than the biter tip, the biter tip is made out of carbon impregnated plastic, something along those lines. This is a hollow carbon stem, and some of the other lower quality, lower dollar products use heavy brass tips or aluminum tips that are also very heavy. And in my experience, a plunger tip that is heavy does not react very fast due to inertial resistance to movement. So when you make a mistake on your fingers, the arrow is flexing different and your impact points are different on the target, so your groups open up. So I find that there is a direct relationship between how light a plunger stem can be and how forgiving your setup is. Now, as far as accuracy goes, that might be up to the other factors within the plunger itself or the tune that you're using, but for forgiveness, which is ultimately the name of the game, you definitely need a light plunger stem. So this plunger stem in the AAE Gold is the lightest on the market by far, and it weighs almost nothing, relatively speaking. So there's a massive advantage to this when it comes to forgiveness. Now, I've had some people asking me specifically about how the plunger affects stuff. I said it can affect the way your tune looks, and people are having issues with left to right impact change. And yes, of course, as you change the spring tension, your left to right impact is going to shift. But where your bear shafts and flet shaft impact in relation to each other is going to be somewhat similar. So a lot of people say, well, do you use the matchstick method? Do you do the stiff plunger setup to make sure your arrows are spined correctly and your bow weight set correctly and all that stuff? Generally, I don't. I've done it in the past. I didn't really see a massive advantage over the walkback method that I prefer to do. So I go with the walkback method to set my center shot, not the stiff plunger method. And I just adjust my bow weight depending on the spring tension that I'm using to get that arrow to fly how I want it or within reason. And then I do fine tuning with a couple clicks here or there to get my groups tighter. And, despite many people thinking that they aren't shooting well enough to do fine tuning, I think you absolutely can. And I see a massive advantage to it. I haven't covered that yet, but it's coming soon. People will do the matchstick method, get everything set up, their baseline set up, and then they adjust their plunger tension so their groups impact where their sight is directly over the top of their arrow. I don't find a necessity to that. I don't think that that's needed at all, because all I want the bow to do is shoot the best groups possible. I don't care if the sight's over this arrow. I don't care where it is. If it's inside of the string, towards the inside of the riser, I think that's a negative. That means you're probably using too light of a spring tension, or there's something else going on. Every single one of my bows shoots the best where my sight pin is outside of center in relation to the arrow, even on parallel shaft arrows where I'm setting the center shot up straight down the center. So I don't think you need to adjust this to get your impact point in the center of your arrow, because, like I said, I'd rather have a bow that groups well and just move my sight to make the groups go in the middle. Because if you're not shooting tight groups, you're not shooting high scores. And another question that I've had asked is, do I adjust my plunger to compensate for changes in weather condition, like changes in temperature or things like that? In general, I do not. Yes, during different heat and temperature conditions, especially if you leave your bow out in the sun, the spring will essentially change stiffness. Now, I don't know how much. I'll probably do some testing eventually in the future to see how much heat affects plungers. But in general, I never adjust my plunger at all while I'm shooting. When I'm shooting bare bow with this shirt on, I will be adjusting my plunger, because that is part of the game. As you're going to different distances, you change your crawl, you essentially change your draw length, the arrow's impact left or right difference. I will be compensating with my plunger. Now, for recurve, I do not change my plunger at all due to tune, because in my opinion, weather conditions changing is going to affect so many more things on a larger scale than your plunger spring. So you're going to deal with rain or wind or cold, and your fingers being stiff and not coming off the string the same is going to affect the way the bow performs a whole lot more. So there's some other things, there's bigger fish to fry when it comes to making sure you can still shoot big scores under adverse weather conditions. Okay, so that was most of the questions that were asked answered. So now I'm going to show you how to set up two plungers identically the same, so that way they shoot the same and you can test two different plungers head to head against each other. Okay, so I'm going to set the center shot first. First, I'm removing this O-ring that keeps the AAE tight. And what I'm going to do is you compare them side by side, head to head against each other. And the way that I do this is I can take the tip of this one and butt it up against the adjuster of this one. And you'll see that the biter tip now does not touch the AAE tip. So I will adjust this adjuster and basically try to make them be touching. And once you get it close, you'll have to really pay attention to it. And you'll see now I'm really close. So the AAE is touching and the biter is, and sometimes you have to screw it like this. The biter is just missing, or actually it's just touching too much, so I'm going to back it off a little bit. And it looks to me pretty good. They're both touching identical. So these two plungers now have the same center shot setting. Now you could use a micrometer like this, but not everybody has one. And not everybody wants to go spend the money to have one just in case, for this exact reason. So, this one's 9350. Or 9530, Now just with my method, and I haven't checked these, 95, 60. So I'm 3/1000ths of an inch off, or 3.5 thousandths of an inch off, just from eyeballing it really quick. That's close enough as far as I'm concerned. Now you could make it perfect. It could have been user error with the actual caliper, but that's how you set center shot. So once you're done, you lock down your center shot. If you are interested in a caliper like this, I'll put a link in the description below. And also, I'll put a link in the description below for some of these really nice handled Allen wrenches. They're just super simple, and they're a whole lot easier to deal with and nicer to use rather than using Allen wrenches. And then now what I'm going to do, I know that both of these have medium springs in it, and I don't have a screwdriver handy, so I'm just going to use the calipers to loosen up my adjuster. And so now what you want to do to compare spring tension, I'm going to make it really weak. I know they're pretty much identical, so for the sake of this video, I made it wrong. Watch the tips as I'm pushing them in together against each other like this. Watch which one moves first. You'll see that the biter one is moving and the AAE one is not moving until I go into about there. So I'm going to crank up the tension, and I want to see the first initial movement be in both of them. So you could see the AAE was moving on that one. Take 3 clicks off. That first initial move is both of them at the exact same time. Now, I find the initial movement to be the most critical for impact and tune, because the arrow doesn't flex a whole lot and move these plungers in a whole lot. It's not moving them in this much. It's really just moving them in about that far. So you really don't need to have them the same all the way through, and they won't because of the difference in spring profiles. So as I push these in, obviously the biter has to travel in less, but actually the actual spring tension of these two are almost identical throughout the range of compression as well, but that first initial movement is what you're looking for to set up identically. So now I should be able to take this plunger, put it in my bow, sight in, shoot some arrows, put this plunger in my bow, and I'm going to be within a couple clicks at 70 meters on my sight pin and still have the same impact point. So I can compare and directly contrast this plunger versus this plunger and see which one groups better. Plus, if this one's my primary and it breaks, I've got a backup that's identically set up, and now I don't even have to worry about it in case I have an equipment failure.
Thanks for watching, and thank you to my Patreon supporters. If you want to become a Patreon supporter or check out books, apparel, and some seminar info, head to jkaminski.com, and be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified every time a new video is uploaded. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you again.